The Christmas dinner name is Diana Matthews, and I'm 52 years old. I've learned that sometimes the most satisfying moments in life come not from revenge, but from watching karma unfold with grace and a knowing smile. It was mid-December when my husband Robert came home that evening, loosening his tie as he walked through our front door. We'd been married for 28 years. Good years, mostly. We'd raised two beautiful children, built a comfortable life, and I thought we'd settled into that peaceful phase where companionship mattered more than passion. Diana, he said, handing his coat carefully on the rack. I need to tell you something about Christmas dinner. I was in the kitchen, preparing his favorite pot roast. The smell of rosemary and garlic filled our home. I wiped my hands on my apron and turned to face him. My ex-wife Sharon called. He continued, looking somewhat uncomfortable. She's going to be in town for Christmas, and I thought it might be nice if she joined us for dinner, for old time's sake. We ended things amicably, and it's been 15 years. I studied my husband's face. Robert was a handsome man, even at 55. Salt and pepper hair, kind eyes, a gentle demeanor that had drawn me to him all those years ago. He'd been divorced for 2 years when we met, and he'd always spoken respectfully of Sharon. Something in my gut stirred, but I pushed it aside, of course. I said, smiling warmly, "That's very mature of you both. I'd love to meet her properly." Robert looked relieved, perhaps surprised by my easy acceptance. He kissed my forehead. "You're amazing, Diana. Thank you for understanding." What Robert didn't know was that I had plans of my own. You see, 3 months earlier, I'd been at the grocery store when I quite literally bumped into Marcus Hendricks. We'd gone to college together, dated briefly before life took us in different directions. He'd moved to Seattle, married, had a family. I'd heard through mutual friends that he was divorced now and had recently moved back to town. We'd had coffee, then lunch, then several more lunches. Nothing inappropriate, just two old friends reconnecting, sharing stories of our lives, our grown children, our dreams that had shifted and changed over the decades. Marcus was 60, a retired architect, with silver hair and laugh lines that crinkled when he smiled. He'd always been kind, thoughtful in a way that made you feel truly seen. Our friendship had rekindled something warm inside me, a reminder of who I'd been before I became simply Robert's wife. After Robert's announcement about Sharon, I picked up my phone. "Marcus," I said when he answered, "how would you feel about coming to Christmas dinner at our place? I'd love for you to meet Robert, and I could use a friendly face at the table." "I'd be honored," Marcus replied, his voice warm and genuine. The week before Christmas, I began my preparations. With careful attention, I cleaned our home until it sparkled, decorated with garlands and lights that cast a golden glow throughout the rooms. I planned a menu that would showcase everything I'd learned about hospitality over the years. Robert noticed my extra efforts. "You're really going all out," he observed, watching me arrange fresh flowers in crystal vases. "Well, we're having guests," I said pleasantly. "I want everything to be perfect." "Guest," he corrected. "Just Sharon." "Actually," I said, turning to face him with that same calm smile, "I invited an old friend as well. Marcus Hendricks. We went to college together. He recently moved back to town, and I thought it would be lovely for him to join us since he doesn't have family here." I watched Robert's expression carefully. Something flickered across his face, but he recovered quickly. "Oh, that's nice of you. I thought so too," I replied. "After all, if we're celebrating reconnecting with important people from our past, why not make it a real gathering?" Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow coating our neighborhood in pristine white. I spent the morning cooking, losing myself in the rhythm of preparation. Turkey with herb butter, roasted vegetables, my grandmother's recipe for sweet potato casserole, cranberry sauce from scratch, and a chocolate pecan pie that had won ribbons at the county fair. Our children, Jessica and Thomas, had their own family obligations this year, so it would be just the four of us. Intimate, revealing. I dressed carefully that evening, choosing a deep red dress that hugged my curves, a diamond necklace Robert had given me for our 25th anniversary, and heels that made me feel elegant and powerful. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who knew her worth. Marcus arrived first, promptly at 6, holding a bottle of excellent wine and a bouquet of winter roses. When I opened the door, his eyes widened with genuine appreciation. "Diana," he said softly, "you look absolutely stunning." "Thank you, Marcus. Come in, please. Let me introduce you to Robert." My husband appeared from the living room, and I watched the two men size each other up as they shook hands. Robert was polite, but I could see the question in his eyes. Who was this distinguished, handsome man? And why had I never mentioned him before? Sharon arrived 15 minutes later. She was petite, blonde, carefully maintained in that way that spoke of expensive salons and personal trainers. She wore a designer dress and carried herself with practiced confidence. "Robert," she exclaimed, kissing his cheek with familiar ease. Then she turned to me. "You must be Diana. How lovely to finally meet you." "Welcome, Sharon," I said warmly, taking her coat. "Please, come in. This is our friend Marcus." "Marcus, this is Sharon, Robert's first wife." I emphasized the word first just slightly, watching Sharon's expression shift as she registered Marcus's presence and his obvious comfort in my home. We gathered in the living room with appetizers and drinks. The conversation flowed, though I could sense the undercurrents. Sharon kept touching Robert's arm, laughing at his jokes with an intimacy that spoke of shared history. Marcus, for his part, was the perfect gentleman, attentive and engaging, asking thoughtful questions and sharing stories that made me laugh. "So, Marcus," Robert said, his tone carefully casual, "how long have you and Diana been reconnecting?" "About 3 months now," Marcus replied easily, "though it feels like no time has passed at all. Diana was always special, even back in college. I was foolish enough to let her go once. I don't intend to make that mistake again." The silence that followed was profound. Sharon's eyes darted between Marcus and me, reassessing. Robert's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "How wonderful," Sharon said, her voice bright and full. "Young love rekindled, not so young anymore," I said with a gentle laugh. "But perhaps that's what makes it more valuable. We know ourselves better now. We know what matters." Over dinner, the dynamics became clearer. Sharon kept steering the conversation toward memories she shared with Robert. "Remember when we went to Napa? Remember that little restaurant in Boston? Remember our anniversary trip to Paris?" Each memory was a small claim, a reminder that she'd known him first, known him in ways I hadn't. But I'd learned something important over the years. The past only has the power you give it. "Sharon," I said during a lull in her reminiscences, "Robert tells me you're in real estate now." "That must be fascinating." She preened slightly. "Yes, actually. I just closed a deal on a property in Malibu. Oceanfront, absolutely stunning, impressive," Marcus said. "Though I imagine the California market is quite different from here," as Sharon launched into details about her career. I caught Robert watching me. There was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Uncertainty, perhaps, or recognition that the dynamic had shifted in ways he hadn't anticipated. After dinner, as I served pie and coffee, Sharon excused herself to use the restroom. She was gone for several minutes, and when she returned, I noticed she'd refreshed her makeup and let her hair down. The evening progressed, and the wine continued to flow. Sharon grew bolder, her touches on Robert's arm more frequent, her laughter louder. At one point, she leaned close to him and whispered something that made him stiffen uncomfortably. Marcus and I exchanged glances. He reached under the table and gently squeezed my hand, a gesture of solidarity and something more. She was nearly 11 when Sharon finally stood, swaying slightly. "Robert, darling, would you mind terribly giving me a ride to my hotel? I'm afraid I've had a bit too much wine, and I don't trust myself to drive." Robert looked trapped. As he should. "Actually," I interjected smoothly, "Marcus was just saying he'd be happy to make sure Sharon gets home safely." "Weren't you, Marcus?" "Your hotel is on his way." Marcus smiled, understanding immediately. "Of course. It would be my pleasure." Sharon's face fell. "Oh, but I thought that's so kind of you, Marcus," Robert said quickly, relief evident in his voice. "Sharon, Marcus is completely trustworthy." After they left, Robert and I stood in the doorway, watching the taillights disappear into the snowy night. The silence between us was heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Robert turned to me. "Diana, I need to apologize." "For what?" I asked, my voice calm. "For being a fool. For not seeing what Sharon was really after. For taking you for granted." He paused, his voice rough with emotion. "And for being jealous of Marcus all evening, when I have no right to be." "You've been nothing but gracious." I studied my husband's face. In the porch light, he looked older, more vulnerable than I'd seen him in years. "Robert," I said gently, "did you invite Sharon here hoping to rekindle something?" He shook his head vehemently. "No, I swear, no, I think I wanted to prove something to myself. That I'd moved on. That I'd chosen better. But somewhere in the planning, My ego got involved, and I didn't think about how it might affect you. And what did you learn? I asked. He reached for my hands. That I have everything I need right here. That the woman I married is gracious and kind, and so much more than I deserve. That watching another man appreciate you the way Marcus clearly does made me realize how much I've let routine dim my appreciation of you. I let his words settle between us. The thing about long marriages is that they require forgiveness, but also honesty. Marcus and I are friends, I said quietly. Good friends. He reminds me of who I was before I defined myself only as your wife and our children's mother. He sees me, Robert, not just what I do for others, but who I am, Robert. Nodded slowly. You deserve that. You deserve to be seen. Yes, I agreed. I do. We stood there in the cold for a long moment, our breath making clouds in the winter air. Are you in love with him? Robert asked, his voice barely a whisper. I considered the question with the honesty it deserved. I care for him deeply. Could I love him? Perhaps, but that's not really the question, is it? The question is whether you and I still choose each other, not out of habit or obligation, but because we genuinely want to build something together. I choose you, Robert said immediately. I choose you, Diana, not because you're convenient or familiar, but because you're extraordinary. And I've been too blind to tell you that nearly enough. Then here's what I need, I said, my voice firm but kind. I need you to see me, really see me. I need you to be curious about my thoughts, my dreams, the parts of myself I've set aside. I need you to understand that inviting your ex-wife to Christmas dinner without really considering my feelings was thoughtless, even if your intentions weren't malicious. You're right, he said. I am so sorry, and I need you to know that I won't be taken for granted again. I won't be the woman who simply accommodates everyone else's needs while ignoring her own. Robert pulled me close, and I let him. What can I do? He asked against my hair. Start by being present, I whispered. Be curious. Ask me questions. Let's remember why we fell in love in the first place. And then let's build something new on that foundation. We went inside, and I started clearing the table. Robert joined me, working alongside me in companionable silence. As we washed dishes together, something shifted between us. It wasn't dramatic or earth-shattering. It was quiet, like the snow falling outside our window. Did you really invite Marcus to get even with me? Robert asked as he dried a serving platter. I smiled. I invited Marcus because he's my friend, and because I knew Sharon would try something. I wanted you to see what that felt like, to watch someone you care about being appreciated by someone else. But mostly, I invited him because his presence reminded me that I'm still a person worth appreciating. You are, Robert said earnestly. You absolutely are. 2 days after Christmas, Marcus called. We met for coffee at our usual cafe, where winter sunlight streamed through the windows. That was quite an evening, he said, his eyes twinkling with amusement. It was, wasn't it? I laughed. Diana, he said, his expression growing serious. I meant what I said at dinner. I care for you deeply. If you ever decide that you want something different, something more, I'll be here. I reached across the table and took his hand. Marcus, you've given me a precious gift. You've reminded me who I am beyond the roles I play. You've helped me find my voice again. I'll always treasure that, and I'll always treasure you. But you're staying with Robert, he said. It wasn't a question. I'm choosing to see if we can build something better together, I explained. Not because I owe him anything, but because I believe we might still have something worth fighting for. And I can only do that because you showed me I have choices. Marcus smiled, though I could see the wistfulness in his eyes. He's a lucky man. I hope he knows that. I think he's starting to, I said. We remained friends, Marcus and I. Good friends. Robert came to accept that, even to appreciate it. Because real love, mature love, isn't about possession. It's about celebrating the people who help your partner grow. Robert and I started going to couples counseling in January. We talked about things we'd avoided for years. We remembered and rediscovered. We built new traditions and honored old ones. It wasn't always easy, but it was honest. As for Sharon, I heard through the grapevine that she'd gotten engaged to a venture capitalist in Los Angeles. I sent her a card congratulating her, because holding on to bitterness only hurts the person carrying it. That Christmas dinner became a turning point for us, not because of the drama or the revelation, but because it forced us to be honest about what we wanted and what we were willing to give. Sometimes revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about showing people who you really are and then making choices that honor your own worth. Sometimes the best response to being taken for granted isn't anger or retaliation. It's simply refusing to diminish yourself anymore. I'm 52 years old, and I've learned that the most powerful thing a woman can do is know her own value, not in a way that diminishes others, but in a way that refuses to accept less than she deserves. Robert and I celebrated our 29th anniversary last month. We renewed our vows in a small ceremony with just our children and closest friends. Marcus was there, standing beside Robert as a groomsman, because forgiveness and growth are beautiful things. When people ask me about that Christmas, I smile. I think about the woman in the red dress who invited chaos to her table and emerged stronger for it. I think about the lesson in standing tall, in knowing your worth, in choosing yourself even as you choose love. And I remember that sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to be seen exactly as you are, and the wisdom to surround yourself with people who celebrate the truth. That's not revenge. That's resurrection.